Hey, what's up, guys? And welcome to episode 74 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. And let me introduce our very special guest for today, RT Dickson, looking amazing right now, who's going to be answering a few questions today. RT, welcome aboard the Talk4 podcast. Please say hi to the fine people listening and just give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do before I shoot some questions.
Good morning or afternoon to everybody out there, wherever you may be. RT Dickson here. I've got Swamp Fox parked behind me, and I fly Swamp Fox at Airshows.
Yeah,
That's basically what I do.
that is amazing. And yeah, I think the audio only listeners right now are going to have to come over to the YouTube channel to see this because, I mean, when I first went into the Zoom meeting and you see this thing, it is just incredible. And I mean, the stuff that you're doing with it and the air shows is just, it's amazing. And I can't wait to ask a few questions. So yeah, RT, if you're good to go, do you want to jump on to question one?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's
Let's
get it
jump in
then.
there. So
Awesome.
question
So
go for it.
let's rewind a bit then. So, how did you actually get into aviation to start with, and what's your backstory with flying?
So interesting. My dad was in the Army Guard and artillery, but didn't fly in the military. So when he got out of the Army, he went to university and joined an aero club there while he was at college and learned to love flying. So by the time I came along, he owned a small Piper PA-12,
Mm-hmm.
and I got my first ride at 6 months old in the
Wow,
back seat with my mom. Yeah, so yeah, I guess that's how it started. I remember small aircraft as long as I can remember. General aviation, um, growing up around guys that flew Wacos and T-34s and monocoups and just interesting stuff. But who doesn't like warbirds? And that's always, from a young age, love the warbird thing. And here we are. But background, so around it, learned how to fly at a fairly early age. Soloed at 16. Got
wow.
my private at 17. Um, and one thing led to another.
That's amazing. Right. So, little question that I'm just thinking of right now then. So, you said your first flight was at 6 months old, which is obviously very, very, very young. And when I think back to my childhood and stuff, like there's little bits of things that I remember from even from like a very young age. Obviously, it gets hazy the further back you go, but there's like some little memories and core memories that I remember. I'm just interested. Do you remember that first flight somewhat? Or what is kind of like your earliest memory of being in a plane?
I do not remember that. I do remember um, going for a ride. So my parents lived when I was very young, up until about the age of 2, uh, on a farmer's farm who had a 3,000 foot grass strip in his front yard,
Mhm.
which I highly recommend to everybody who can swing it. They need their own runway at their house. And I remember he had a Baron, Beechcraft Baron,
Mhm.
and he and my father were going for a ride, and I was going to ride in the back seat with him, and I didn't like it for some reason. I don't remember, but that's one of my early memories. So they put me out, and I ran across the runway back to the mobile home my parents lived in at the time, and
Right.
that was fun. One of the earliest ones I do remember, I was about 3 years old. My father owned a Swift,
Mhm.
Globe Swift. And the Swift, if you're not familiar, it's a 2-seat side by side, all metal, kind of post-war design, um, retractable gear, kind of sexy aircraft actually, and very
Sounds it.
popular airplane today, and fully aerobatic. So the first time I actually flew an airplane, I was on my knees in the right seat, because so I could sit up tall enough,
Mhm.
and I had a control yoke, and I took the control and a lap belt because safety third back in the 70s. And I took the control yoke. Dad asked me if I wanted to fly, and I took it, and I went all the way to the lock, and it just started rolling. He said we were about upside down by the time he got it back, because it's a quick little airplane. And so
Oh,
that's my first flying experience.
Wow, that's awesome. So literally, literally from 6 months old, been flying, and here you are now with this incredible thing that you're doing. So tell me about this then. So obviously I saw a picture on the website of Swamp Fox in the UK in 1945. So can you just tell me a bit about the history of this plane and how you came to acquire it then?
Yeah, so I'll have to look that up. Now, the Swamp Fox that was in the UK, and there's a funny story behind the name Swamp Fox as it relates to the UK. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we'll go into that in a second. Um, the original one was scrapped back in 46 or 47.
Mhm.
So this one is not the original Swamp Fox, but it's painted just like it. And Will Ford, who flew the original one, was still alive when this came out of restoration. And there's some geographical reference to this name here, or importance to the name here, where I live in the Carolinas. And so we decided to honor not an ace. Felt it's important as we go on the airshow circuit to educate the public about the military and the vast effort involved. You know, it's not just the aces that win the war. And I've had lengthy conversations with many people. One of them, Bud Anderson, talking about this, and he's fully supportive. You know, a lot of people who don't know, the U.S. especially is sort of a quarterback culture, right? We love the quarterbacks, the CEOs, the stars. It's like the military is a team effort. It takes a large group of individuals working together to meet a goal. So we felt it was important to honor somebody who went off and maybe felt like he didn't do enough, but he did his duty and went off to war, and that's more than enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we painted it Swamp Fox. Will got a ride in it back in 2012. Unfortunately, he passed away 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. But the name Swamp Fox. We'll talk about Will Ford here in a second. He was actually born. His mother was living in New York at the time,
Mhm.
and his biological dad died at a very early. Will at a very early age, like right after he was born. And so his mom moved back to her family in the Carolinas, so North Carolina and South Carolina.
Mhm.
And Will pretty much grew up in South Carolina. Well, if you look back at U.S. history and British history as well, it's a common history we share. Um, we had a little dust up back in the 1700s, and if you've ever seen the Mel Gibson movie The Patriot,
Mhm.
it's a good modern day representation, but a very loosely based on a historical figure by the name of Francis Marion.
Okay.
And Francis Marion is credited with being one of the Rangers credit him as being one of the first Rangers. He was very much involved in asymmetric warfare. So back during what we call the American Revolutionary War, you know, armies would line up on either side and shoot each other until people started falling down. Well, he
Right.
would go out and shoot the officers, and the British didn't like that. And then he'd run away and hide in the swamps. So the British actually named Francis Marion the Swamp Fox.
Oh wow. Okay.
So fast forward, so he's sort of a regional hero for our side of the Revolutionary War, the War for Independence, the insurrection, y'all might call it, whatever. And Will, growing up in South Carolina for most of his years and being the relative smartass that he was, thought it would be funny to name his plane after what the British consider a war criminal from the Revolutionary War. You know, he figured enough time had passed, it shouldn't ruffle too many feathers, but he actually got in trouble for this. And you know, in a desire not to offend the host country, his leadership actually tried to hide the plane from any media in the UK
I love it.
in 45. So
Feathers
yeah,
ruffled.
yeah.
That's so good. So how did you come to get hold of it then? So how did that happen?
Well, so it was just who doesn't want a P-51, right? I mean,
Good point.
every schoolboy wants a P-51 or knows, or they used to know what a P-51 was. And Dad and I just started talking. I had started a financial advisory firm. He had sold his company, and we had some money laying around, and
Mhm.
decided to step up from the smaller planes we were flying to the P-51. he did a restoration from when I was 4 until I was in college at Georgia Tech. So about 16 years, he restored a T-35.
Wow.
Which competed for the primary trainer contract for the U.S. Air Force and Navy, and lost the contract. They only built about 19 of them, but he spent 16 years, most of my formative years, restoring this airplane in the basement. So he's big into restoration and working on airplanes, and he kind of likes the warbird thing. But we go, hey, we'll go from the little trainer, and that's actually parked over there under the wing of. Let's see, you can kind of see her.
Yeah, I see that.
See her parked over there.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, that's nice.
But anyway, so we just decided to buy a Mustang, and we started looking for Mustangs. And this one behind us was coming out of restoration in California, and the gentleman who owned it already had a bunch of warbirds and didn't want 2 Mustangs, so he decided to sell this one, and there was no paint on it, so we got to pick what paint colors, and I've already relayed that story, but that's how we got it back in 2012.
My God, he had 2 of them. Right, so obviously doing a bit of research on the plane and the planes, seems like from what I've read, there's only about 150 left, which are kind of airworthy or in restoration right now. Is that a fair stat? And I mean, how do you actually approach finding one of these things and finding somewhere to buy it when it's that rare?
Yeah. So that's oddly enough, the Buckaroo we talked about, they only built 19, there are only 5 left. So if you think that's rare, that one's pretty
oh my
rare.
God.
And it's a blast to fly, but it doesn't have the sex appeal and horsepower that this one does. So yeah, 150 to 170. They're probably more flying today than there were 20 years ago, because the whole values have risen to a level that it makes sense that you can restore airframes that might have been considered unrestorable years ago. And they're great shops, all across the world, a bunch here in the US that restore that focus on restoring Mustangs.
Right.
How do you find one? This one was off market. This was word of mouth. We talked to a friend of ours who has a couple of Mustangs himself, and he knew of this one, and put us in touch with the owner, and we bought it. There are usually 1 or 2 or 3 Platinum Fighters. Platinum Fighter Sales usually has 1 or 2 listed. You can find them on like Trade a Plane or Controller. But Mustangs, like the whole values are determined by the condition of the airframe, the quality of the restoration. So the values are pretty broad these days.
I see.
Anyway, so
there you go. Really, really interesting stuff. And so I mean, this is amazing because you're one of the only people who I mean, how many people are on this world who can actually say what it's like to fly this plane and stuff? So obviously I'm not too new to aviation, but I've never gone flying in anything other than commercial jets before. And recently I went out in an L-39 Albatross, and I kind of know how the G's feel now and stuff. And just so interested then. So if you had to kind of pit the L-39 up against the P-51 or something, how many G's are you pulling in an air show then? And how brutal is it actually to fly this thing to that sort of level?
It's interesting. People ask me about it. And one thing that surprised me about the Mustang when I first started flying it, I'm thinking it's a fighter and it's very nimble. It is sort of. It's also very much like a pickup truck without power steering. The faster you go, the heavier the controls are, and actually, you kind of have to muscle it around a little bit.
Right.
So stepping back, the experience of flying the Mustang, it's I've used the word visceral before. It's a very physical. There's a lot of noise, there's smells from the exhaust and residual hydraulic fluid. No one's puked in this thing yet, so you don't have that to contend with, thank heavens. It happens.
Fingers crossed, they touch wood.
That's right, yeah. But it's a very physical experience, and it doesn't have air conditioning, right? So the L-39 has air conditioning. I've never had the pleasure of riding in one, but it's got air conditioning, makes things a little bit nicer. As far as G's go, my air show routine is I let the plane do what the plane does. right? I'm not out there trying to show what a great pilot I am. I'm the world's okayest pilot. I've got a coffee mug around here somewhere that says it. Um, but I just kind of the plane is so graceful by itself, right? And I'm not trying to fly it really hard. I'll pull 4 to 5 Gs in my opening maneuver, which is a vertical loop. Um, with a lot of smash. It makes the airframe scream, that whistle sound that you hear when you load up the Gs, which is pretty cool. I think the L-39 is an 8G airplane too, and the Mustang's an 8G airplane. I've never pulled 8Gs in the Mustang. I don't think it's any need to do that. Now, when this was restored, um, corrosion can be a problem in an older aircraft. So anything that had any corrosion was replaced with new longerons. I think it's got new spars in it, so it's a fresh airframe. So I'm not afraid of putting G's on it, but I want to take care of it too. It's a piece of history.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
I would love to fight an L-39. Um, I've never had the opportunity to do that. I fought a bunch of other things that are interesting. I fought a Focke-Wulf 190 once. That was fun. Um, as far as G's total on the body, 4 or 5. I've pulled 6.5 G's. That's the most G's I've pulled the Mustang. That's not too bad. I had the extreme privilege. Um, I'm fairly active with the South Carolina Air National Guard, the Swamp Foxes, of all things, oddly enough.
Oh wow.
And they fly F-16s. And after hanging out with those guys for about 8 or 9 years, they offered me, and obviously I accepted, a ride in the back of an F-16 last Sunday. And
Wow.
we went out and we pulled 9 Gs twice and 8.5 Gs once. And that is props to all the people that do that on a daily basis. I was fine. I didn't fall asleep, which is, hey, you got to have life goals, right? And it was fun, man. It was fun. What an incredible jet. So
Absolutely. Well, I mean, one of my recent podcast guests was John Callsign Rain Waters, and he was the F-16 demo pilot for a time. And you see the stuff on YouTube, and it just looks like, oh my God. So I've got to ask then, so what was that like, kind of stepping into that scenario? Obviously, you've done a lot of flying in your time, but was there something that you were kind of like, oh boy?
yeah, actually, yes. Honestly, and I haven't shared this with a lot. I was nervous. I was very nervous going into it. I was nervous from the standpoint of, and I had 6 sacks in every pocket I could find, and just in case I didn't feel good, right? But I felt, and nobody put this on me, but I felt a tremendous amount of expectation. It's like, hey, he flies air shows. He should be fine at it. So I didn't want to disappoint that, right? And thank heavens I didn't. And it was just incredible. It was a blast. I know Rain's good people. I know most of the Viper demo because they're based out of Sumter, out of Shaw Air Force Base, which is 20 miles down the road from the South Carolina Guard Base.
Wow.
And in fact, one of the guys in South Carolina used to be a Viper demo pilot too, and a good friend of mine. It was amazing. We went up, we had a blast. We pulled 9 Gs. There was another F-16 in the airspace that we did a little maneuvering with, shall we say. And that's when I pulled 8 Gs at the merge, pulling into that guy. And that was, it was just such a rush to fly that thing. What an amazing jet.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's amazing that you got to do that. I'm so jealous. But so talking about like the joyride kind of thing, I looking at the website, I wasn't 100% sure. So is Swamp Fox a single seater or a 2-seater? And obviously, I think I read that I think you mentioned too at the start of the podcast. I think you mentioned that the original pilot got to go back into it after it was restored. So what was his reaction like to that as well? If that's what happened.
He did, and what a treasure and privilege to take him for a ride. And this is the first time he'd been in a Mustang since 45, 46, wow, whatever it was.
When was that ride?
It was December 2012.
Okay.
So it's been a little while. And 2 other Mustangs came up, and there's a picture of 3 Mustangs in formation, and they represent one of each of the 3 squadrons in the 357th Fighter Group that were based in Leiston. Leiston, is that pronounced correctly? I think it's close. It's down east. It's some little town down east in the UK that I've never been to.
Could be
And
limestone.
it's spelled Leiston. And where the base was, there's a cakes and ale park now.
Mhm.
For what it's worth, and a little museum there. I need to get over there and check it out. But yes, Will got a ride in the back, and he had a medical checkout first because he was 80, 89, 90.
Oh
So
wow.
getting
Okay.
age wise, and you know, it was requested no aerobatics, no high G. So we just went up and did formation. And then when the other airplanes broke off, Will's like, yeah, I want to do a roll. And I said, well, I thought, no aerobatics. He goes, yeah, whatever. Let's do a roll. So we
Legend.
roll. Yeah. And he's in the back seat. We pulled a little bit of G, 3 Gs, and he is just loving it. And there's a point where he's got tears in his eyes, and he's just having memories. And it was a treasure. I don't know how to relate that, but I will always remember that, just spending time one-on-one with him in the airplane. But not only him, that's been one of the biggest honors of trying to keep this history alive, being trustee of this history, is meeting these guys on the road.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I've met a ton of World War II guys, crew chiefs, pilots, several of the Tuskegee guys, and they've all been just amazing human beings. General McGee came up to me. She was on static display at the Smithsonian up in DC, and somebody came up and said, there's a P-51 pilot inside, wants to come out and see you. Is that okay? It's like, yeah. and he comes, so his family's there with him, and he was in signing books inside, and he comes around the corner. It's the first time I'd met him, and he is trotting. He is moving, and he was like 94, 95 at the time, and probably moving faster than I could. And he was just so excited. He ran up and he gave me a big hug, and we just started talking like, and that's the one thing about aviation that I love. It transcends so many boundaries and barriers, and doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you're a pilot, you talk the same stuff. And he's telling me stories about fighting in this thing, and I'm just in awe and sitting there listening to him. So that's been the greatest honor and treasure of keeping the history alive, is meeting the people that flew them. And of course, meeting new people and kids and modern day military. It's all about the people.
That's absolutely beautiful that you got to do that. I mean, that's just such a nice story and such a nice thing to see that. I can totally imagine that it's just so fulfilling to have been able to do that and give that experience to that person. And I love how he was like, went into it thinking, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And then he gets back up there, starts having the memories, and he's like, okay, I need to do a role. That's just hilarious. I love it.
Yeah.
But if we talk about that community and stuff, then I'm curious. Obviously, the Mustang is so rare, and there's so few of them. Do you have like kind of a Mustang community, and a sort of like, is there kind of the little sort of club almost for that sort of a thing, or not so much? It's just general aviation stuff.
No, there is, and there've been. Will gave me a patch, Mustang Pilots Association, and there must have been an association years ago, probably military Mustang pilots.
Right.
But most Mustang guys know each other. It's a fairly, like you said, 150, 170 flying examples, probably another equal amount that could be made airworthy over time. But out of what, 15,875 or whatever, I think that's close to the total number built. That's a fairly small number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a small community, and again, it's you can relate to somebody, because we talked about what it's like to fly, and if somebody else has had that experience, you've got a common frame of reference to talk about flying.
So true. I mean, since I started posting about the kind of the aviation stuff, I've had a few people who followed and everything and got chatting. And it's so nice to have like this kind of common passion for something like that. And it's just, I have to say, I do totally agree with you. I sort of felt the same way about martial arts in a way too. You kind of have like all the differences go out the window and it's just pure passion. And it's like that with music and a few other things too. But I can totally see that. But this leads really well into my last question, actually. So for the kind of the aviation fans and everything, what has been your favorite place to go flying or do a display in?
Oh wow, it's kind of like asking what my favorite airplane to fly is. It's, you know, whatever I'm flying at the time is my favorite. And there have been so many fabulous venues. Obviously, Shaw Air Force Base is kind of home of the area where Francis Marion lived, what, 200 years plus years ago.
Hmm.
Louisville, Kentucky, they've got a big air show every year called Thunder Over Louisville, and it's part of the Derby Festival, the Kentucky Derby Festival.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is the last duty station to this airframe was the Kentucky Air National Guard. So that's fun to go hang out with those guys and bring them a piece of their history actually back to the unit. And then the air show is over the Ohio River, and it's between two bridges. So it's, shall we say, a more challenging venue to put on an aerobatic demonstration.
Mm.
I did Key West the first time this year. What an amazing place, amazing people down there. Homestead, South Florida, just a passionate crowd of people that came out. It was awesome. I did Santa Maria, California last year. Phenomenal people, very welcoming. I mean, it's a long way from home for me. Again, the second air base that Swamp Fox was stationed at in 45 was Santa Maria.
Right.
So kind of taking her home, taking that airframe home. Yeah, so there are a bunch of places out there that are fun.
There you go. That's brilliant. So kind of leading on from that, so I'm a huge aviation fan, and there's not much kind of going on around here in the UK, but I did see that the Sun and Fun Festival that went on this year, I'd never even heard about it before, all this stuff, but I'm thinking of going there next year. And just out of interest, so if you were kind of talking to, well, you are talking to someone who's like completely out of the loop in terms of these festivals and stuff, especially in the States, two questions. One, are we going to potentially see you at Sun and Fun next year? Because I'm hoping to go for the next year one. And for someone who like hasn't been to any of them, would you say there's like a top 3, top 5 something must do's in terms of aviation festivals and expos and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Sun and Fun is a great air show and expo. I didn't fly it this year. I did fly it last year. We'll see what next year brings. I would love to go fly Sun and Fun. Sun and Fun's a great crowd, great people. And there are usually a bunch of Mustangs down at Sun and Fun.
Mm-hmm.
The largest one I think in the world would be the Air Venture, EAA's Air Venture in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and that's usually the end of July, 1st of August every year. That is a must see for everybody. It's an international venue. There, you know, you could see 20 P-51s all parked next to each other, and Corsairs. Wow. And all sorts of, you know, different warbirds, B-25s, jets, F-86s. And that's just the warbird section. And then you've got the L-birds and T-birds, the liaisons of the trainers, and a huge section of those aircrafts, the Navions, the military Cubs, the L4s, the trainers, the T6s and T35s. There were 3 T35s there in 92. That was the first year I went there. And that's amazing. Then you've got the antique classics. And I mean, you might have 14,000 aircraft parked at Oshkosh. It's huge. If you like warbirds, and they haven't had it the past few years, and they are building a new facility up in Santa Maria, California, but the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California, that air show is phenomenal. If you want to go see just a tremendous collection of warbirds, most of them flying, Planes of Fame is top of the list. And there are other museums around. The Commemorative Air Force has several different wings throughout the U.S. and puts on different shows and different air shows. They operate a bunch of World War II aircraft, all the way up to Fifi. CAF flies Fifi. the B-29. There is a group in Wichita, Kansas that restored Doc, which was another B-29, one of the last ones come off the line. So now there are 2 flying B-29s in the world, which, if you've never seen one, it's just an impressive piece of aviation and history. It's interesting to note that the B-29 program cost more than the atomic bomb program
Ooh,
for
Jesus.
the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I always that amazing. So my background is banking, and the finance aspect, I always find a little interesting. So
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there's nothing cheap about aviation from what I've seen in any circumstances. But
well, somebody once told me that if you teach your children a love of aviation, they will never have money for drugs. So,
oh, brilliant. I love that. Is that going to be more true? Oh, great stuff. Right. I'm going to put you on the spot with a hard one. This is going to be tough for you for the very last little bit. Okay. So if you could fly any plane that you haven't flown so far from history, that could be in the past, or you could opt for something that's really modern right now. What would it be and why? You've got one token here.
oh, geez. That's tough because the list is so long. I've never flown a Corsair, want to fly a Corsair, never flown an F-86. We'll get back to that in a minute. The jets, the F-16 ride just really opened my eyes to performance. And I've got friends that have flown the F-22 demo, and they have had some videos of their performances where you can put on the Oculus,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
and look around, kind of not in the cockpit, but you can look around and watching the control surfaces move, because you just tell the plane where you want to go and the computer sorts it out, and it's kind of weird. I don't know. Growing up, I always liked the F-15s. They were just beasts, mighty. If I had one,
It's tough, isn't it?
man, it is really, really tough. And I don't know how to narrow that down.
It is
Maybe
pretty tough.
maybe the Raptor.
I mean,
Maybe
who wouldn't want to go in one of those? I tell you what, little question too then. Obviously you've been in F-16 and stuff, but I've heard the debate that between the F-22 and the F-15, I've heard conflicting stories about which is the best fighter jet ever. Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, my opinion is completely uneducated and irrelevant. However, having said that, and this is probably a lesson that we need to be careful of. I think it was Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, who once said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme." And if we look through history, we do need to be careful. And this is strictly my opinion. The Western world, the U.S., the U.K., we put a lot of emphasis on technology, and we can't ignore the technology. And there will most likely, as much as it pains me, there will most likely come a day when there are a lot of remotely piloted fighter aircraft, because we are reaching the limits of physical ability in the airframe. However, I don't think they will completely go away, because the situational awareness the pilot in the cockpit gives is very important. Having said that, the pilot in the cockpit is the deciding factor of the effectiveness of the weapon system. And North Korea still operates, I think, 50 MiG-17s. Randy Ball does an awesome show on the road. Randy, oh geez, put me on the spot. Soames out in California does another awesome performance in the MiG-17 on the airshow circuit. But North Korea still operates 50 of them, and they're still lethal to a certain point. They would most likely be sacrificial if they went up against a squadron of Raptors or Eagles.
Yeah.
If it came down to the Eagle or the Raptor, if it was a one-all fight, the Raptor's going to win. no
Right.
question about it. If they're being employed as a weapon system in, a flight of fighters, I don't know. It depends. I think the Raptors are still going to come ahead on top, but in a all out conflict, flankers versus Raptors versus Eagles versus MiGs versus
Yeah, it's interesting. I
it's going
spoke to
to
Rain about that, and he was saying that he thinks it's the Raptor. He said it's the Raptor. So really interesting. And actually, what you were saying about the kind of the AI stuff too, I asked him that exact question, and he was thinking along the lines of there's always going to be a pilot in the seat. But he was thinking that there might be kind of like AI wingmen coming out of there. So there might be like 5 F-35 wingmen AI, and he was saying that an F-16 has actually already been flown by AI as well. And I saw some of the clips of that, and it is it is getting scary, isn't it? All this stuff.
it is scary, and I would agree with Rain on that. That you're going to have somebody that is in theater making decisions in real time.
Yeah.
However, given the decision making environment that we have these days, somebody wants to joke that you've got to have JAG in the back seat, with the judge advocate signing, off release of weapons. But you've got to have somebody, close by. But the technology is coming where you can link a bunch of those up, and you might have one pilot that's managing a squadron of AI remotely piloted vehicles. So technology is scary, but it's going to come down to who's in the seat as to which one's better. The Raptor has all the advantage. The F-35 is not, I mean, I think it's well known, is not the dog fighter that some of these others are. But dogfighting, I hate to be the guy to say it, and I'm not sure I fully believe it, because we've said it so many times that guns aren't needed anymore. But it's getting less and less likely that you're going to have a 1v1 or 2v2 dogfight in the air anymore. It's going to be decided at greater distances. But the F-35 does not have the 1v1 performance the Raptor does, or the Eagle for that matter, or the F-16. So I don't know. I hope we don't find out. I hope this is all sort of academic exercise, and we all live in peace and enjoy old airplanes.
That would be very nice, wouldn't it? And amen to that. And on that note, that has been the 4 questions done for today. And before we wrap this up, it is time for what I like to call the shameless plug. So, RT, feel free to take a minute and promote anything that you're working on, your page, your website, your social media, and where can we find all your stuff? Send my people where you want.
No, awesome. So try to keep it simple because I'm kind of a simple guy. Swamp Fox P-51. That'll find most anything. So the website is swampfoxp51.com. Facebook, Swamp Fox P-51. Instagram, Swamp Fox P-51. I'm working on kind of revamping maybe the website and the social media platforms. I've been a one-man show up until now, but I've brought some additional people on board to kind of help with that a little bit. Air shows I've got next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend I will be at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina, Goldsboro. Come out and see us. It's going to be a great show. They're expecting a ton of people. It's always awesome. It's the home of the 4th Fighter Wing, the 1st Eagle Squadron. So it brings the history and heritage back from flying Spitfires to the U.S. They went Spitfires on the Mustangs. The worst kept secret and the top secret thing that I am working on is later this year, Lord willing, and I get checked out and everything, I will be adding a new routine to the portfolio in an F-86. I kind of picked the paint scheme for it. Can't release that one yet, so stay tuned. But Swamp Fox will have a stablemate, sort of the little brother, the F-86 Sabre. So excited to be doing that. Excited to get that piece of history on the road. and should be in full force next year. So
awesome. I can't wait to see all of that. And yeah, RT, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. Honestly, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on, and it's just been great. Thanks for coming on.
Louis, thanks for having me. If you're ever in the States, ping me, look me up. I'll buy you a pint. We'll go talk airplanes.
Sounds good. I'd love to do that, and I certainly will. Like I said, hopefully coming back to the States next year. I really want to see a good air show, so I was thinking Sun and Fun, and hopefully I'll get to see you there. Yeah, whereabouts are you based? Just last thing.
Yeah, so we're sitting in the hangar in Concord, North Carolina.
Okay.
So just outside of Charlotte. So on the East Coast, but have been doing shows, across the U.S. So, stay tuned to the schedule if you want to see Swamp Fox in person. I'd love to show it, to whoever's out there, and come out and see the show.
Ah, brilliant. And yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully get to see you next year. And thanks for coming on. And thank you guys for listening to. This has been episode 74. And if you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now.